sorry for being just a couple minutes late. I had a little technical difficulty there getting going. Welcome to the SMA Cookie Bake Along. I'm gonna wait just a minute or two. I think that there are a few people still waiting to come in. I know we were supposed to have about 75 people. I don't know if everybody will join us live, but we're gonna wait before we actually start baking, before we get a few more people in here. If you have not already preheated your oven and you are going to be baking with us, please go ahead and preheat it to 350 degrees. And if you see me looking over here, I have a monitor so that I can watch for questions. And thank you, you love my Pyrex bowl. I actually collect Pyrex, so I love baking with them. They're really fun to play with. If you are not familiar with me, hi, I'm Baker Betty. I know we kind of have two groups joining us today. We have some people who are familiar with me and maybe didn't know a lot about SMA. And then I know we have a lot of people from the SMA community as well that maybe are not familiar with me. So welcome to both of you. Thank you so much for joining us. If you are not familiar with me, hi, I'm Baker Betty. I am Chicago based and I am a baking instructor, and before the pandemic started, I taught a lot of classes here in the city. But because we're not doing that right now, I started doing some live streams and classes online, and we usually do about one a month, and usually they're free, but I've done a few that are for a paid ticket, and then I donate those proceeds to an organization. So we did one for the Lakeview Pantry at the very beginning of the pandemic, and then just about a month ago, Anna from Cure SMA reached out to me and asked if I would want to do something for Cookies for SMA. So if you're not from the SMA community and you're unfamiliar, Dana is a girl. She just turned 10 years old, and I think she's maybe joining us today. Dana, if you're here, maybe say hello in the comments. She started an organization called Cookies for Cures, where she raises money for rare pediatric diseases. And she had all these plans to do some of her cookie bake sales this year to raise money for SMA. But then when the pandemic hit, obviously bake sales are not great right now. So we're kind of helping her out with some of her fundraising for her Cookies for SMA fundraiser. So because thanks to all of you and this workshop, we're able to give about $1,800 to that fundraiser. So I'm really excited to be able to help her out with that. I think we will go ahead. Is everything, can you all hear me well? Can you see me well? If everybody can kind of like give me a, we are going to start with the ultimate chocolate chip cookies. So it looks like everybody can hear me. That's great. So let's go ahead and dive into the chocolate chip cookie recipe. I have all of my ingredients pre-measured, but I'll try to go slow enough that if you didn't pre-measure ahead that you'll have time to measure things out. But the first thing we're going to do is brown our butter. So if you have never browned butter before, I think this is one of the best ways to kind of elevate your cookie, especially a chocolate chip cookie recipe, up a little bit. It adds these like really caramel kind of nutty notes to your cookie. So if you have butter that is not super soft, like mine is soft, but it's not really soft, I'm just gonna cut it up into a few chunks before I add it into my pot, just so it melts a little more evenly. But if your butter is pretty soft, you can skip this step. And we are just going to put this in our pot over about medium heat. So it's 1 stick of butter, which is 4 ounces or 112 grams. And just go ahead and put that in your pot over medium heat. I'm seeing somebody say that they've never browned butter before. If you, for some reason, don't want to actually brown it, you can just melt it. So either way, but browning it is really, really going to give it so much flavor, and I highly encourage it if you've never tried it before. Okay, now while that's going, you never really want to walk away from your butter while it's browning. It can definitely burn if it gets too hot. but this is gonna take a minute, so I'm just gonna kind of set this here. And the next thing we're going to do while that's browning is we are going to pulse our oats into kind of an oat flour. Now this is also optional. If you would like to just put your oats whole into your cookie, you can. But these are the ultimate chocolate chip cookies, and this is another thing that really kind of bumps them up a notch. Trying to get my food processor here. So what you want to do, you can be using whole oats, whole rolled oats, or quick cooking oats. Either are fine. But we're gonna put this right into a little food processor here and just pulse it a little bit until it becomes kind of like a really coarse flour. And what this does, oh, Chris, I'm sorry, can you get me the other one that looks like this? I got the wrong time. My husband is being my assistant this afternoon. Oh, I'm sorry, it looks like a stick. Yes, thank you, I grabbed the wrong one. Thank you so much. So this is just gonna give our cookies a lot of really nice texture, and then we still get that oat flavor. So, my butter is taking a little while to melt here, but if yours is going faster than mine, what's gonna happen is it's going to melt, and then it's gonna start kind of bubbling up, almost like it boils, and then it will start browning. And you wanna kind of, every once in a while, give it a little bit of a stir, make sure it's getting evenly melted. Okay, so any questions so far? I know I can kind of start talking really fast when I'm teaching, so slow me down if I'm going too slow. But so I'm just gonna pulse these oats. And I will show you the texture we're looking for here. Okay, so let me show you this. If I can open this. How is everybody's brown butter doing? I am just now starting to melt. This took a little while to heat up, but if yours is already bubbling up, you can turn it down just a little bit, but you want to just keep an eye on it. Keep stirring it. Oh my gosh, I might need my husband again. I can't open this. I need your strength. Thank you. Oh no. Okay, so my butter is just now starting to bubble up a little bit. So I'm just gonna watch it, really kind of make sure that it is, thank you. Sorry. Thanks, babe. Okay, so if you can see my oats here, I'm not sure how well you can see that, but they're just a lot smaller than they were. You can even go a little bit smaller than this, but it's just kind of like a much finer oat. And it's really, really gonna give our cookies a really nice texture and a lot of chewiness too. I don't know about you, but I love really, really chewy cookies. So if your butter is starting to bubble up, what's gonna happen is it will start almost looking foamy, and then it will kind of clear up, and then it will start browning. Now you will start smelling, it'll almost start smelling like nuts. And you wanna use your nose to kind of know when it's done, but also watch it. We're looking for our butter to look like a pretty caramel color. You don't wanna get it too dark, you don't want it to look brown, or I'm sorry, black. You don't want to go from black to brown because then it's burnt. But you want it to be like a really nice caramel color, and you want to smell all that nuttiness. So mine's kind of getting close here. If you have another burner beside you, I only have one, and you are using nuts for your cookie, you can go ahead and add those to your skillet and get those toasted up. Now nuts are another optional thing, and I know this is kind of like a lot of steps to make chocolate chip cookies, but these are not your like everyday chocolate chip cookies. These are your special occasion chocolate chip cookies that you really want to impress somebody or give yourself a really nice treat. So these are the ones that you've planned ahead for. You have a lot of time to make them. I actually used to own a cookie company, and these were my most popular recipe for my cookie company. So they're special cookies. Parker family says they love chewy cookies. I do as well. That's my favorite kind of cookie. I like it to have like a little bit of crispness on the outside and then a lot of chewiness on the inside. Okay, so I can see that my butter, probably not gonna be able to show you that very well. My butter it looks less milky color. It's starting to look more clear, like a more clear yellow. So I know that I'm getting close. So I'm gonna stand here and stir and really watch it because I don't want it to burn. How's everybody else's brown butter doing? I know it's hard to talk in the comments when you're baking, so, but if you're having issues, I'm happy to help. And I know this is maybe a little bit of a unique step that a lot of people have never done before. So, for those of you who are not familiar with SMA and are just learning about it from this bake-along, definitely check out the links that I put below in the description of this. You'll learn, I linked to Dana's fundraiser, so if you wanted to donate any more directly to her fundraiser, you can, but also there's some links down there that go directly to the SMA, or the Cure SMA website, and you can read more about it. I first learned about SMA when I was in college. I used to be a music therapist. Oh, her brown butter looks great. Perfect. Okay, so mine is starting to brown too. Oh, I wish I could show you this better. I'll pour it off into a clear bowl so you can see it better. But I'm almost there. It's really, really, really close. I'm gonna pour it into a clear bowl so you can see it. And can you smell that nuttiness? Oh, it smells so good. Okay, so I'm gonna pour mine off. Now, you might notice that there are some brown bits that have separated from your butter. Those are your milk solids, and you want those. You want all of that in your cookie. Can I give you this? This is hot, so probably. Got it. Okay, so here is what our brown butter looks like. See how dark brown that is? That is what you're looking for. It smells super, super nutty and all those caramel notes. Okay, now I'm quickly gonna put my pecans on my burner and just toast them up a little bit. I really, really love the crunch of adding a little bit of nut into my cookie, but that's optional. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But toasting them also really improves their flavor. So if you don't like nuts in cookies, you should try toasting them first because it really, really changes the flavor. Okay, once your brown butter is browned, you can put it in your mixing bowl that we're gonna mix our cookies with. And we're gonna set it aside to just cool for a little bit. It's perfectly fine if yours isn't this dark. Brown butter is kind of on a scale. So if you want just a little bit of nutty flavor, you can brown it just a little bit. You can go a little bit darker with it. But you just want to be careful not to go too dark. If it starts looking black, it has burnt and it will taste really, really bitter. So yes, if it's not that dark, you're perfectly fine. You can even just melt the butter if you wanted to skip the browning. So I'm gonna give my nuts just a little bit of toasting. They're in a dry pan over medium heat, and I'm just gonna let them go until they smell like pretty fragrant. What I was saying originally is that I first learned about SMA when I was in college. I used to be a music therapist. So when I was in college, there was a client in one of our practicums that had SMA. I did not work directly with the client, so I didn't learn a lot about it, but that's where I first kind of learned about SMA. And then more recently, I started following Shane Burkott and Hannah Award. In the SMA community, you know who he is. And that I've just learned a lot more about it. So when Anna first reached out to me, I was happy to say yes. So it was a perfect next bake along to do. So I'm happy you all are here joining me. Okay, I can smell that my nuts are low. Set those aside to cool. How is everybody doing? Are you keeping up with me? Am I going too fast? Everybody good? Yeah, I addressed that. Cool. Okay, so we have our brown butter in a bowl here. You do want to let it cool a little bit. I'm not going to wait too long here because they'll still be fine. But you don't want it like completely fresh off the stove right into your sugar. So I'm just stirring it a little bit to kind of aerate it a little bit and get it to cool down. Does salted butter brown the same way? Yes, it does. So salted butter or unsalted butter. If you prefer to use salted butter, that's perfectly fine. You just always want to reduce the amount of salt in your recipe by 1/4 teaspoon per stick of butter. So this recipe has 1 stick of butter, so you would want to reduce it by 1/4 teaspoon. But it browns exactly the same. But like vegan butter does not brown like this. It has to be real butter, or margarine's not going to brown. But yeah, salted or unsalted butter does do this. Okay, so we're going to start by mixing our dough together now. So I have my brown butter in the bowl here, and we are going to add, oh, you can't hear me. Is anybody else having difficulty here? I'll try to speak up a little more. Okay, make sure that when you look at your YouTube video, there's a little slider on the volume. Make sure your volume on the actual video is all the way up, as well as your computer or tablet volume. There's 2 different places to adjust the volume. So there's a volume right up on your actual video. So, okay, so we're gonna add our brown sugar into our mixing bowl. This is 3/4 of a cup. I really like to use dark brown sugar because it has more molasses in it, which just makes our cookies more chewy. So, but that's up to you. You can use regular light brown sugar, but I just really like the dark brown. So we're just gonna stir this in. So this recipe requires no mixer. We're just gonna use a mixing spoon, spatula or a mixing spoon, and that actually is going to help our cookies be even a little more chewy by starting with melted butter instead of butter that you cream. It's going to give our cookies a little more chewiness. So once you have your 3/4 of a cup brown sugar mixed in, now we are going to add our egg and our vanilla. So 1 egg, and I think it's 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla. I used to have this recipe memorized because I made it all the time when I had my cookie business, but it's been a while since I made it. Okay, so we're going to stir that together. And if you didn't hear me at the beginning, if you don't have your oven preheated, definitely preheat that to 350 now, so it's for sure preheated when we go in the oven. Lisa asked if this should go in the stand mixer. This is a mix by hand recipe. There's no reason to put it in the stand mixer. Our next recipe does need a mixer. So if you want to just use a regular mixing bowl and a spoon for this one, so you don't have to clean your stand mixer mixing bowl for the next recipe, you can. If you prefer to put it in your stand mixer, you can. It's really, you can't really mess it up if you want to use the paddle attachment on your stand mixer, but you can also just use a spoon. So, but for the sugar cookies, we are going to use either a hand mixer or a stand mixer, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so we have in our bowl our brown butter, we have our sugar, we have our egg, we have our vanilla, and now we're going to start adding our dry ingredients. So, we have both baking powder and baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon each, and instead of mixing them into my flour, I just add them right in before I add in my flour so that I don't have to get another mixing bowl dirty because I pre-measured all my ingredients, so I gotta clean all of those anyways. And then I have 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And I like to use kosher salt. If you are using table salt, you probably want to reduce that in a half, so about a 1/4 teaspoon, because table salt is less dense, so a 1/2 teaspoon is actually going to be more salt of table salt than if you're using kosher salt. The reason I like using kosher salt is because it's a bigger grain of salt, and then I like how it just gives us a little bit of flakiness throughout our cookies. So in our mixing bowl, I just added all of my leavening and my salt. Baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon, baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon, and salt, a 1/2 teaspoon. So the only thing we don't have in here so far is our flour, our oats, and the good stuff, the chocolate chips and the pecans. How's everybody doing so far? Doing good so far? Great. Okay, so the last 2 things we need are our flour and our oats, and our chocolate chips. So before you add your flour in, I do want to mention one thing. I'm big on weighing my ingredients. You probably noticed I added weight measurements. So I always measure my ingredients by weight because it's much more accurate. But if you did measure your flour by cups, make sure that when you measure it, you take a spoon, kind of stir it and fluff it up, and then spoon it into your measuring cup. Do not pack it down and then level it off. One of the most common baking mistakes I see is people kind of packing flour into their measuring cup, and you don't want to pack it in. Just lightly spoon it in and then level it off. And that will make sure you don't get too much flour in your cookies. So I have 1 cup of flour here, which is also 120 grams. We're going to add that in, and then we're going to also add in our oats. If you're using whole oats, you can put those in now, or your ground oats. You can add those in. The butter smells wonderful. I agree. Brown butter is one of my favorite smells in the entire world. There's just nothing like it. I'm so glad you like it. I think once you have a chocolate chip cookie with brown butter, it's kind of hard to go back. I mean, all chocolate chip cookies are good, but it is kind of hard to go back. Okay, so now I have this really, really thick dough batter here. If yours doesn't look like this, if it looks a lot thinner, like it's not a really thick batter, you can add just a little bit more flour to it. Depending on where you live, sometimes you need to adjust a little bit, but should be pretty good. And now we're going to add in our chocolate chips and our pecans. I like to hold back just a few of the chocolate chips to top my cookies with, so that they look really, really pretty when they come out of the oven. So I just held back maybe about a 1/4 cup of the chocolate chips, or you can add in all the chocolate chips and then add extra to the top. I'm not gonna argue with you if you do that. And then I'm gonna add in my pecans, if you're using them. And my pecans are still a little bit warm, and I think they're gonna melt my chocolate chips a little bit, which I kind of like makes the cookie dough a little bit like chocolatey in and of itself. But this is what our batter looks like. Very, very thick. It's got a lot of texture in it, and that's where we're going. Okay, I will let you all catch up here. When you're ready, when you're done mixing, we are going to go ahead and start scooping our dough. And I like to use parchment paper. I just think that it, one, makes cleanup a lot easier, and I don't love baking on silicone baking mats. You can, if you like it, go for it. I just think they're kind of hard to clean up, but silicone or parchment paper is perfect. Now, if you don't have a cookie scoop, you can just use a spoon. But I really like to make these cookies pretty big. Now, this is up to you. If you want to make smaller cookies, you're definitely welcome to. But I think that the texture for making these cookies really big makes kind of a huge difference. So they're large. They're like 3 tablespoons. So they're like a big bakery style cookie. But if you want smaller cookies, feel free. You'll just want to watch the baking time a little bit. They'll cook a little faster. So I'm just scooping these on. I'm going to bake probably 6 of these now, and then I'm going to scoop the rest and put the rest in the freezer. So what I do is I just freeze the actual scooped cookie until they're frozen solid, and then I put those in a Ziploc bag, and I put instructions in that recipe on how to bake them straight from the freezer. And then you can have fresh cookies whenever you want, and it's pretty amazing. So, but let's see, how are we doing? I don't think I've missed any questions yet. If I miss your question, I'm trying to watch the best I can. Just ask it again. I'll try my best to get to them. Okay, so one of my secrets about making cookies that look really, really beautiful is adding like 3 or 4 chocolate chips right on top before you put them in the oven. That makes sure that you actually really see the chocolate when they come out. And then I also like to sprinkle a little bit of salt over the top before they go in. That's also optional. There's a lot of optional parts of this cookie, but that extra salt hit on top really, really just like, it brings them up another level. The salt and the sweet. So you decide if you want to do that. I'm definitely going to do that. If you want to bake more than 6 cookies, I'm only baking 6. I would only put about 8 per sheet pan if you're making them about this size, because you want to give them enough space. You want to make sure that you're not overcrowding your oven. If you put too many on a sheet pan, they're actually going to spread out more because they don't have like, there's too much for the heat distribution to like go across all of the cookies. They actually will end up spreading out more. So if you like those really thick, nice puffy cookies, don't put as many on your sheet pan. Okay, so these are gonna go into the oven. I'm gonna scoop the rest for freezing, and these are gonna go in at 350 for probably about 10 minutes. I'm gonna set the timer for 8 minutes so we can check on them after. Can I have you, please, my lovely assistant? Thank you. Yes, can you set a timer for 8 minutes too? Thank you, I appreciate it. Okay, so I'm just going to, I have just another little sheet pan here that I'm going to scoop the rest of these on. And I don't need to give them space because these are just going to go right into the freezer for baking at another date. Does anybody have any questions so far? We are moving right along. Make sure everybody's, oh, you want to put them in the very middle of the oven. That's a great question. Pretty much unless a recipe specifies, you probably is always going to be in the middle of the oven. I try to remember to specify, but sometimes I don't. But if it doesn't specify, I would assume middle, and it should hopefully tell you if it's not. But yes, middle of the oven. Another tip I always have for bakers is if you do not have an oven thermometer in your oven, I highly, highly suggest getting one. It's very, very common for ovens to not actually heat to the proper temperature. So it might say that it's at 350 degrees, but it might really be at like 375 degrees or even like 300 degrees. Ovens are so commonly off. So you can put an oven thermometer in your oven. If you have it preheated to 350 and it's actually at 325 when you look at the thermometer, then you know when you are looking at a recipe, you're actually going to need to set your temperature up higher because your oven's not going to hit the right temperature unless you do. Can I give you these? Please and thank you. Kelsey says it smells incredible. I don't know if her daughter's with her, but her daughter Violet loves to bake with her. She really likes to lick the spoon, which I don't blame her. I am just gonna go ahead and do the same thing to these ones that I'm freezing that I did for the ones that went in the oven. And top them with some more chocolate chips and sprinkle those with salt as well, so that when I want to bake them from frozen, all I have to do is pull 1 or 2 out, put them in the oven, and I have fresh cookies. And they seriously taste like you made them fresh. I mean, it's my favorite thing to do. Okay. Freeze it, please. Thank you. Okay, I am going to give everybody a little chance to kind of catch up and make sure we're all in the same spot. Let's see, somebody said they had problems with their oven too. Yes, I mean, there are so many times when, you know, I run a website, a recipe website, and there are so many times when people will tell me, you know, it took 10 minutes longer than you said to bake this. And, you know, times do vary on recipes, but a lot of times that's because the oven temperature wasn't right. But not only can it make things take longer to bake, but it can also, like, if your oven's too low for cookies, your cookies are going to spread a lot more. If your oven's too hot, they're not going to spread as much. Judith wants to know if I rotate the pan halfway through. I don't usually for cookies, but my oven bakes pretty evenly. So if you know that your oven bakes a little bit hotter in the back than it does in the front, then yes, I would definitely rotate it. And it never hurts to rotate it. So if you're unsure if your oven is not baking properly, then I would rotate it. I prefer to bake these 1 tray at a time. I find that if I do 2 trays on 2 different racks, usually one of them gets like a little bit burnt. So I prefer to do 1 tray at a time, and these bake pretty fast that you can do that. But if you want to bake 2 at a time, space your oven racks out, top third, bottom third, and then I would rotate like Judith asked. If you had 2 sheet pans in the oven, about halfway through, move the bottom one to the top and the top to the bottom. You can even flip them this way too, and that will help them bake a little more evenly. Yep. Good questions. You think cookies are a very easy thing to bake, but there are a lot of nuances for sure. How is everybody doing? Are we still kind of working on the chocolate chip? I'm not trying to rush anybody. We've got plenty of time here. Okay. For the sugar cookies, you are going to need a mixer. So either a hand mixer or a stand mixer, because we do need to cream our butter and sugar. I'm going to just use a hand mixer. And it looks like everybody seems to be doing okay. Awesome. These sour cream sugar cookies are my favorite sugar cookies. The sour cream kind of gives them a little bit of tanginess, and I also like to add a little bit of lemon zest into them, which is optional, but they don't taste like a lemon cookie, but it just gives them like a little something that sort of amps up the flavor a little bit. These are really popular around the holidays. They make a really, really soft cookie. They're kind of like those Loft House cookies that you might have had in the grocery store. You know, those round cookies that have that big pile of frosting on them? They have sort of the texture of that, but those cookies use shortening, and I don't love using shortening in my cookies because you can kind of like feel a greasiness on your tongue. These don't use shortening. The sour cream is going to kind of play the role that the shortening plays in keeping them really, really soft. And these cookies also do a really good job at holding their shape. So if you want to make cutout cookies like for, you know, Halloween or Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever, and you want to make fun shapes, these are a good cookie because they will hold their edges and hold a nice shape. So I'm kind of boring. I am not a decorator. I definitely, I'm not good at like intricately decorating cookies. So I usually just make round ones, or today I'm going to make heart-shaped ones. But if you are much more advanced at decorating than me, please feel free to use all of your favorite cookie cutters. Okay, so we are going to move forward. Oh, please talk about the type of chocolate chips you use. Thank you. So I use, these are my favorite chocolate chips to use. These are the Ghirardelli 60% chocolate chips. If you have little kids, these might not be their favorite chocolate chips because they're not as sweet as like a semi-sweet. They're bittersweet chocolate, so they're a little less sweet. But the reason I really, really like these is because you know how a chocolate chip, a standard chocolate chip, kind of doesn't melt in the oven? They have stabilizers in them that makes them not melt as well, but these don't have that. So they get super, super gooey and melty in the oven. Plus, it's just a good quality chocolate. They are obviously a little more pricey, but sometimes I can find them on sale. They're like $3.50 usually a bag. Those are my favorite. Let me check my cookies really quick. Okay, I just checked them. They probably need about 2 more minutes. So, but they're looking really, really good. So you can use any chocolate chips you like, or you can also just take a chocolate bar and chop them up. But those Ghirardelli ones are hands down my favorite. If you have a different favorite, let me know. I'm gonna wait to start these cookies until these other ones come out of the oven because I wanna show you another trick I have for when cookies first come out of the oven. How to make them look perfectly round, which, you know, you don't have to. I just think it looks nice. Any other questions about the chocolate chip cookies before we move on to the sugar cookies? No? Okay. Okay, I'm gonna pull these out. I think they are done. We just needed a little more time. Okay, so here they are. They look like set on the edges and then a little gooey in the center, and I know they're giant. But, you know, you're gonna eat 2 of the smaller cookies anyway, so why not just eat 1 large cookie? Okay, so what I'm doing right now is I'm taking a spoon. I don't know if you can see this. But I'm kind of like pushing it up against the edges of the cookies that like got a little bit misshapen, and it kind of pushes them back into a circle. It's totally not a necessary step, but these are the things I started doing when I had my cookie business because I just really wanted them to look like beautifully round. Mine still look like a little ball. Okay, so that tells me that your oven is probably cooking too hot. So if your cookies did not spread at all, that's probably your oven cooking really hot. So you might want to turn your temperature down a little bit. So for these cookies, you don't need to press them down, but that's dependent on your oven being at 350. So they should spread but still stay pretty thick. But if they're not spreading at all, that's because your oven's too hot and the cookie is setting before it gets a chance to spread out, if that makes sense. So, I don't know if you guys can see those. That's what they should look like. Oh, I want to eat one really bad, but I'm going to wait for them to cool. So I let them stay on the baking sheet for about like 5 minutes before I take them off. It will help them solidify a little bit, and then you can transfer them. Should they be soft when they are out of the oven? So they should look, yes, they should be soft. They should look like they have like a little bit of a crispy edge, but the center will still look like a little bit underbaked. But as we're gonna let them cool on the cookie sheet for a little while, they'll solidify on the cookie sheet, if that makes sense. Let me see if I can get a spatula and show you a little better. to show you how well you can see that, but the center looks just a little bit underbaked and the edges are a little bit crispy. Anything else? Mine's still, oh yeah, I saw that. So if yours didn't spread, they should still be tasty, but if you do make the rest of them, if you do make a second sheet pan, maybe turn your oven down a little bit. Yeah, I wouldn't cool them on the oven because your oven is still pumping heat out of it. So if you have somewhere else you can cool them on your countertop, I would definitely move them because there's heat coming out of your oven. You don't want to cook them too much, for sure. Cool. Hopefully everybody at least has some cookies out of the oven so far. If you're gonna go ahead and cook your second, if you're gonna cook the rest of your chocolate chip cookies right now, you can go ahead and put those in. If you are not going to cook the rest of yours, go ahead and turn your oven up to 375 for the sugar cookies. We're gonna cook those a little bit hotter. That's gonna help them hold their shape a little better. If you think your oven's cooking too hot, like Parker family, I know your cookies didn't spread too much, so if you think your oven's cooking a little hot, you might want to keep it at 350 because that probably will be closer to 375 for you. Yes, if you want to go ahead, there's only baking powder in the next cookie recipe, so there's not baking powder and baking soda. She asked if she can put all of the leavening in one bowl. Yes, you can. You can always do that. I just measured them out separately so I could remember to say everything that was going into the bowl. But yeah, if you want to put your salt and your baking powder in one little bowl, you can. You can do that. Definitely, for sure. Okay. Are we feeling like we can start working on the next cookie? I'll try to go a little bit slow if you're still managing cookies in your oven. But let's go ahead and start working on our sugar cookies. I have here my 1 stick of butter that is softened. I put it out about an hour ago or so. If you're using salted butter, then you can leave the salt out of this recipe. But we're going to start with that, and then we're going to add our granulated sugar in our bowl. And I pre-measured this, and I don't remember how much it was. It's 1 cup. So 1 cup of granulated white sugar into your bowl. And if you want to use the lemon zest, we're going to add that in now. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball the lemon zest. This is an optional ingredient, but I think it just gives it a nice little something, brightens it up a little bit. And whenever you use a lemon zest, I like to put it in with my fat, in with my butter, because the oils and the lemon zest are going to carry through more with the fat in your recipe. So it just helps kind of bring out that flavor a little bit more. I just eyeballed it. You're going to want like about a teaspoon if you do use it, but you know, you don't have to measure it exactly if you don't want to. I would probably use a little bit more actually. Things like that, things like anything that's flavoring your baked good, vanilla, cinnamon, lemon zest, all of those things, the only purpose they're serving in your recipe is flavoring. So those things, you can be a little bit more flexible with yourself. If you really like vanilla, you can add more vanilla. If you don't like vanilla, you can leave it out. Those things can always be flexible in baking. I feel like we always hear baking is super rigid, and it is for some things, but there are things you can be more flexible about. Okay, so we're going to cream this together. If we don't have a mixer, the spatula, can we use the whisk or the other mixing attachment? Yes, you can. That will be fine. For creaming butter and sugar, typically you want to use your paddle attachment or on your hand mixer. This is kind of like a mix between a whisk attachment and a paddle attachment. That's typically what you want to use, but if you don't have that, you can use your whisk attachment. It's going to be fine. Okay, so we're going to cream this together until it's really light and fluffy. I'm going to start on low speed so it doesn't fly everywhere, and then I'll gradually increase my speed. until it is just coming together and light and fluffy. We're not gonna try to whip a ton of air into it, because the more air we whip into this dough, the more our cookies are gonna spread out, and we want them to hold those sharp edges if we do cut them out into shapes. This bowl is just making my butter fly everywhere. Okay. So typically I would do this in my stand mixer, but it's a little harder to live stream with a stand mixer. Okay. I think my butter was a little bit cold, but we will be okay here. Okay, so once your butter and sugar are pretty cohesively mixed and it looks somewhat fluffy, that's all you want to do. So in a lot of cookie recipes, it will instruct you to go for like maybe 3 or 4 minutes. We're not trying to do that with this cookie recipe because, like I said, we don't want it to spread out too much. So just until it's pretty well combined. Okay. Now we are going to, I'm following my own recipe right now because it's been so long since I made these. Okay, now we're going to add our egg and our sour cream into our mixing bowl. So 1 egg, and then I think it's 3/4 of a cup. How much sour cream? 1/2 cup of sour cream. What did I do with my sour cream? I just had it. I lost it. Is it right here? Okay, I found it. I'm a mess. Okay, so 1/2 cup of sour cream. And again, this is going to serve the purpose of giving our cookies even a little more tanginess, like the lemon zest, but also it's going to help keep them super, super soft. Make those perfectly soft sugar cookies. And now we're just going to mix those in until they are incorporated. Make sure that you scrape your bowl down in between and really make sure that you kind of get down to the very bottom of your bowl, especially if you're in a stand mixer, because those ingredients can kind of get stuck at the very bottom under the beaters, and you want to make sure everything is really evenly incorporated. Okay. So, last thing, well, we're going to do our baking powder and our salt before we add our flour because we want to make sure those get evenly distributed. Everything you bake should have a little bit of salt in it. I think that sometimes seems counterintuitive to people, but salt makes baked goods taste less flat. If you don't have any salt, it can taste so overly sweet. It just really rounds out flavors. So always use your salt. Okay, so we've got our mixed mixture here, and our last ingredient is our flour. So we're just going to go ahead and pour that in. And I'm going to start on low speed and then just gradually increase until I get this all incorporated. And this is going to make a pretty thick dough. So towards the end, we might need to do a little bit of mixing with a spatula, because we don't want to overmix. Once your flour goes into your bowl, gluten is going to start developing. So the more you mix, the more stretchy that gluten structure becomes, and it will start making your baked goods really tough if you mix too much after your flour's in. So you'll probably see a lot of recipes say like don't overmix, and the reason they're saying that is because you don't want like really like tough dry cookies, and that can happen if you mix too much. So I would say I probably mixed the dough maybe for 30 more seconds after I added the flour. I made sure all of that flour was absorbed and then I stopped. Can I have you clean these while I finish this up, please, and thank you. Thank you, darling. Okay. So your dough should look really, really thick like this, but it's probably still a little bit too thin to roll out. So we are going to chill this just very quickly. What I like to do whenever I chill cookie dough is I like to press it out flat before I put it in the refrigerator or freezer, because it's going to chill much quicker that way. If you just leave your dough in one big blob in your bowl, it's going to take so long to chill. So even if your recipe, like if you're making some kind of cookie recipe and it tells you to chill it for 3 hours in the bowl, I always spread it out on a piece of parchment paper, and then it will cut the chilling time in at least in half, if not more. Because, you know, we don't have time for all that. We need cookies. Don't laugh at me.
What if you want more chill time?
If you want more chill time, you can leave it in the bowl. Okay, so I just poured all of that dough like just out onto a piece of parchment paper, just in one big blob. Thank you, my darling. And now I'm going to take another piece of parchment paper and put it on top of that, and just use my hands to press it out into, about an inch thick. It doesn't need to be perfect. I'm just trying to thin it out a little bit so that it chills faster for me. And we're going to be rolling these out anyway, so this just kind of gives it a jump start. So for this, somebody's asking how long we need to chill. So for this, I spread it like this, and then I put it in the freezer for just about 10 minutes or so, maybe not even, and then pull it out. You can also put it in the refrigerator, but freezer is going to be faster. So we just want it to harden up a little bit, get a little bit stiffer. So like that. I did not add flour to the parchment. I just went straight onto the parchment. And that's kind of another helpful thing about this, is you shouldn't need a lot of extra flour. We might add a tiny bit of extra flour. I got chocolate on my parchment. We might add a tiny bit of extra flour when we roll them out, but this will help us not need quite as much flour, which will keep our cookies softer and more delicious. So then I just put it on a sheet tray like this, and I'm gonna transfer this to the freezer for just about 10 minutes or so. And while this is chilling, we can make our frosting. For those who are going to bake these cookies today, if you want to make the frosting, we're gonna do that next while these are chilling. So if you need to clean your beaters, if you only have one set of beaters, go ahead and rinse those off so we can make our buttercream. Can I have you put that in the freezer for me, my love? I feel like you can make it work. Have faith. If you need to have a cookie now, they should be firm enough to pull off your sheet tray and have a bite. I'm going to taste because that's the best part. Would you like a cookie? I'd love to hear how you like them if you tried them yet. I have not made those in a long time. They're very nostalgic. That was actually the first recipe I ever developed, was my chocolate chip cookie recipe. Here you go. Thank you. I put all of my dough on the sheet pan, all in one big. I think I do maybe say in the recipe to divide it in half. I forgot that I said that, but I think it does make it easier a little bit if you do divide it in half, but you can do it all in one. I just did it all in one. It'll work. Tracy says yum. Oh, I'm so glad you like them, Tracy. That is great. Perfect. Okay. So if you are going to make buttercream, we're going to do that next so we can decorate. Well, so we have it to decorate cookies. We might not have time to actually do it. But for these cookies, we're just going to make American buttercream, which is the dough supposed to be stretchy or more tough? I don't know that I would call it stretchy or tough. It should be just pretty soft. Soft and easy to spread out on your parchment paper. You should be able to just like very easily press it out into a thin layer. Yeah, it is kind of like Play-Doh. I guess it is kind of like Play-Doh. That's a good description for it. Yeah, that's a good description for it. So yeah, you should be able to just like very easily smooth it out onto a thinner layer on your parchment paper. Yeah. Okay, any other questions so far about the dough? We're gonna come back to our dough here in a little bit after it's had just a few minutes to chill. Delicious. I'm so glad you like them. That's so great to hear. These were my most requested cookie when I had my cookie business, so they're a crowd pleaser. Okay. So for our frosting for our cookies, we're gonna make an American buttercream. American buttercream is just butter and powdered sugar and flavoring. So you can flavor it really with anything you like. Most traditional is vanilla. I like to add a little bit of lemon juice into this to kind of play on the flavors of the cookie. We added some lemon zest in there. You could add almond extract. You could add cocoa powder. You could add melted chocolate. You could add, some people will add like preserves, like raspberry preserves. There's so many different things you can do with American buttercream. But in its most simple form, 1 stick of butter to 2 cups of powdered sugar. Now, again, with the measuring, the powdered sugar is the same as the flour. You want to kind of stir it up and lightly spoon it into your measuring cup. Don't pack it down, because you can really, powdered sugar is so fine and powdery, you can really, really pack a lot of powdered sugar into your measuring cup, and then your frosting is going to be so, so, so sweet. And I always add a pinch of salt. I'm using gluten-free flour 1-to-1. It's doing well. Oh, that's so good to hear, Elizabeth. I don't think I've ever made these with a gluten-free all-purpose flour, so that's really great to know. Would you add any liquid like liqueur? So yes, you can. So for the buttercream, typically I'll add a few tablespoons of milk into it to just kind of like thin it out and give it a nice texture. But if you wanted to add like a liqueur or something, you could hold off on the milk, add in a little bit of whatever liqueur you want to use. And if it starts looking too thin, then you'll just add some more powdered sugar to it. But then you'll just hold off on your cream or milk or whatever you're going to use as your liquid and replace it with your liqueur. So it's super versatile. You can flavor it so many different kinds of ways. So really all we're going to do is just beat it. I just have my sugar and my butter in the bowl here. I added a pinch of salt because I'm using unsalted butter, and it's just gonna help balance the flavor of our buttercream. And now we're just gonna mix it until it's really, really nice and fluffy. If you're using a hand mixer, I like to use a bowl with high sides like this batter bowl, because that powdered sugar can easily fly everywhere. But it's gonna look really dry at first, like it kind of becomes crumbly. But as you continue mixing, it should start coming together, and then we'll add a little bit of milk. And I'm gonna add a little bit of lemon juice, that's optional. So if you want to add a little bit of lemon juice, let's add that here to just kind of loosen this up a little bit and get it to come together a little bit more. I'm again going to eyeball it. You can add as much or as little as you like. I don't remember what I said in the recipe, like a teaspoon or a tablespoon or something. But I'm just gonna do like one small lemon basically for mine. And then I'll see if I need any more milk to loosen it up. Okay. And we're just going to keep mixing that. And that immediately brought it together into more of a frosting consistency. Now I'm going to increase my speed. I'm going to increase this to high and go for like at least a full minute. Usually I'd probably go longer. You probably do want to go longer, but just so you don't have to see me mix for 5 minutes straight. Okay, I want to show you what my texture is. I don't think I'm going to actually need any of my milk or cream because that lemon juice really thinned it out for me. I can tell that this is going to be a nice frosting that I can spread on my cookies. If yours seems super, super thick, you might want to add a splash of milk or cream into yours. If you taste it and it seems super, super sweet, add another pinch or two of salt in it. That will really, really help balance out the sweetness. I think that's one of the biggest complaints I hear about American buttercream is that it is so sweet, and I get it. It is a pretty sweet frosting, but the salt is really going to help it. So here's what we're looking at. Yum. So let me know how you're doing with your frosting. We're going to set that aside and go back to our cookies here in a moment. And let me know if you have any questions so far. Now, this frosting freezes really, really well. If you ever make American buttercream and you end up having way too much of it, I like to just put it in a Ziploc bag and kind of like press all the air out of it, label it, put it in the freezer, and then you can just let it thaw in the refrigerator overnight. You're probably gonna wanna at least give it like a really good like stir with a spatula, or you can whip it a little bit more in your mixer to sort of bring it back to its texture, and then you can reuse it. It does freeze super, super well. Okay, I'm gonna grab my cookie dough back out. If you are at that point, you can go grab yours as well. And get a little bit of flour to have on the side. We might need a little bit. Just get a little bit there. you say put it in the fridge? The frosting, I'm just gonna leave it to the side. If you put the buttercream in the fridge, it will harden up. So it won't work well to frost your cookies, but if you don't intend to frost your cookies this afternoon, you can go ahead and put it in an airtight container in the refrigerator until you're ready to use it. You'll want to pull it out of the refrigerator, give it about an hour before you do use it, because that butter is going to harden back up and it will be really hard to decorate your cookies with. So I pulled my dough out of the freezer and it's much more firm. It's still not super firm, but it's going to be much easier to work with. So I'm going to put a little bit of flour on top of it. Did the vanilla buttercream recipe say for the vanilla sandwich cake? But I had way too much. I put it, what was left in the freezer? Yes. I'm not sure. I don't think that was my recipe, maybe not, but yes, it should be fine. I would go ahead and pull it out and let it thaw. You can let it thaw at room temperature, but yeah, it'll be fine to use. You can use really any frosting you want for these cookies, for sure. Okay, so I did just a little bit of flour over the top of my dough. I'm actually going to flip it over and do some on the other side as well. You could have done this before you spread them out, but I find doing it now makes you use a little less flour, and I don't want to use way too much. I just want to very lightly flour. And I'm kind of spreading it out with my hand. Oven temp is 375 for these cookies, yes. So if your oven is heating, right on, go ahead and crank that back up to 375. If you think your oven is cooking a little hot, you can leave it at 350. But that's going to help. The higher temp always helps things set quicker, which means they're going to spread less. Because when you put something in the oven, the butter will start melting and spreading. So the higher the temperature, the quicker that crust sets, and it won't let the butter spread things out. So if things go in the oven cold, that also helps them not spread. Okay, so what we're gonna do is, after you have a little bit of flour on both sides of your cookie, we're just gonna use a rolling pin and very gently roll this out a little bit thinner. We don't even need to go too much thinner. If you have these at about an inch so far, we're not going that much thinner. I like to go about a ½ inch. The thicker your cookie is, the softer it's going to be. So if you like a more crisp cookie, then you're going to want to roll it out thinner. If you like a really soft cookie, then you want to keep it fairly thick. So I'm keeping mine pretty thick. Let's see. I would say, I'm so bad at knowing what a ½ inch or an inch looks like. I think this is probably a little more than a 1/4 inch, but not quite a ½ inch. See if I can try to show you the thickness I went for. Buttercream does not need to go in the fridge if you will use it this afternoon. So it's going to really harden up once it goes in the fridge. So if you intend to frost your cookies once they're cooled just right today after we bake them, then you are going to want to leave it out on the counter because it's going to get too firm for you to frost your cookies. Just leave it to the side. But if you are not going to frost them until tomorrow, or if you're going to freeze your dough, then you can definitely go ahead and put it in the fridge. Okay, how's everybody doing with rolling out their dough? I'm not sure how well you can see how thick I went. It's really hard to show. If you can see that, but it's not super thin. It's definitely thicker than a pie dough would be. Okay. So I'm gonna just using just a cute little heart. Oh, I'm so glad, Elizabeth. Oh, I just realized who you are. Hi, how are you? I didn't even I didn't connect the dots. Okay, so I have just a simple cookie cutter. I like to dip it in a little bit of flour before and cut it out here. This will be easier for me to show you the thickness. This is the thickness I have here. Can you guys see that? I would call that like close to a 1/2 inch thick. Again, that's completely up to you. If you like super, super soft cookies, you can even go thicker with them. If you want a little bit crisper cookies, go a little thinner. The dough should not be super sticky. If yours is very, very sticky, you can go back in the freezer for a moment or add a little more flour to the top. So mine is very soft, but it's not sticky. And if yours is feeling super sticky, it probably needs to just chill a little bit longer, or you need to add a little bit more flour to the top of it. And you can just use your hand to kind of spread that flour over the top. But you do kind of need to work somewhat quickly, especially if you have a warm kitchen, because the dough will get softer and softer as the longer you leave it out. So for these cookies, we're going to do the same thing like we did with the chocolate chip cookies. If you don't want to bake them all right now, I still suggest go ahead and stamp them out and then freeze them flat on a cookie sheet in their stamped out shapes, because then you can just take the frozen pre-cut cookie, throw it on a baking sheet and bake them straight from the freezer. Makes it so much easier than freezing a full batch of dough. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get as many as I can from this one little batch, and then we will re-roll the scraps. Yes, it can be frozen in a log. If you wanna make slice and bake cookies, you can freeze it in a log and then just do the slice and bake. Definitely can do that. Okay, so my dough is getting pretty soft. If it gets too soft where you can't take the cookies off that you cut out, what I suggest doing is you can take your dough that's already cut, take it like this, put it on a sheet tray, go back in the freezer for a minute, and then that will firm it back up, and then it'll be easier to take your cookies off. This dough is a little bit tricky to work with. It definitely takes a little bit of practice. And we're kind of rushing it a little bit because of class time, but if it's too soft, just give it a little more chilling time. That's always the answer. How's everybody doing? These can be placed together a little bit closer on our sheet tray, because if our oven's the right temperature, they shouldn't really spread. They should pretty much hold their shape. Now the first roll, the first round that you cut out are going to be the softest, nicest cookies. The more you re-roll your dough, the tougher that gluten structure is going to get, and the tougher your cookies are going to get. The second round is usually still pretty good, but after that I typically don't even re-roll again because they start getting really, really tough. I mean, you can keep re-rolling as much as you want, but just keep that in mind. So, those are my first round. I'm gonna go ahead and bake these off, and I'm gonna freeze the rest of them. If you are not at this point yet, don't panic, take your time. I will help you through. What did I say for the length of time on these? Okay, so I say 6 to 9 minutes on these. They do bake pretty fast, and this dough doesn't really brown the way other cookies do. It stays pretty light in color. It will brown just a little bit on the bottom, and that's kind of how you know when they're done. Is anybody using any fun shapes of cookie cutters today? Pretty much all of mine are Christmas cutters, and then I have a few hearts. I don't really have, ooh, tulips and leaves. Love it. You guys will have to send me a picture later if you decorate them. Okay, so this second round, I'm going to freeze these ones because I don't need that many cookies right now. So I'm just, again, putting them on a piece of parchment paper, and then I'll freeze them until they're solid, and then I'll transfer them into a Ziploc bag to bake later. Okay, so for the second round, your dough might be super soft now. So you'll have to use your best judgment to see if you need to do another round of freezing. What you're gonna do is just gently but firmly. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but just press the dough together until it is kind of in one mass again. And then you can do a little bit more flour over the top. And again, ooh, candy cane, I love it. I've seen a lot of people that are like doing, I know it's not July, but that are doing like Christmas in July because, you know, things are not very fun right now with the pandemic. And so I've seen people like decorating for Christmas and stuff. I think that's fun. Get things to feel a little more cheerful. So I think my dough is going to just be chilled enough that I can go ahead and stamp them out again. But if yours is super, super soft, do another round of freezing for 5 or so minutes to get it firmed back up, and then you can recut them out. Okay. I haven't made these cookies since Christmas. I did a cookie class around Christmas and we did these. Should frozen cookies be thawed before baking? No, they will go straight into the oven from frozen. Let me make sure. I think I put instructions on the baking sheet for that. Did I? Let me double check. I didn't. Did I? Oh, I did. Okay, so what you'll do is you will bake straight from frozen, but you're going to add about 2 to 3 minutes onto your baking time. So you'll just put the frozen cookies right on the baking sheet, into the oven, add a few minutes of baking time. And again, when, like I said, cold cookies actually hold their shape better. So they should really, really hold nice sharp edges if you do any kind of pretty cutout cookies. And same with the chocolate chip, you're gonna go straight from frozen. I wrote those instructions on the recipe too. You're gonna bake the chocolate chip ones at a little lower temperature for a longer time. But these ones can be same temperature. They just need to go for longer. Great question. Okay. I mean, I got quite a few cookies out of this batch. This recipe can easily be doubled if you're gonna make these for Christmas and wanna make like a really large batch. Will the gluten develop more as they freeze? No, it won't. Freezing won't affect the gluten development. It's just, oh, I just mangled that one. It's just the more you mess with the dough. So that goes for anything. You know, you're making pie dough, you're making biscuits, scones. The more you kind of like fuss with the dough, the tougher your baked goods become. So for something like a bread dough, when you're gonna knead it, that's because you want to develop the gluten. You want like a really stretchy gluten network to have that like super chewy bread dough that holds in all the gases from your yeast. But for pretty much every other baked good, you don't really want that. So you just gotta be gentle with it. You don't wanna mess with it too much. I still have a lot of extra dough here. I'm going to go ahead and roll one last time because I don't wanna waste it, but I just know that these last batch, they're still gonna taste great, but they just won't have as nice of a texture as those first ones do. How's everybody doing so far? Doing good? Okay. Do one last roll here, get a couple more. Please let me know if you have any last questions. I probably won't really wait for these to cool to frost them. I'll sort of show you what I do. If you want to do any kind of like pretty piping, you can transfer your buttercream into a piping bag and this should definitely be thin enough that you can pipe it on. But what I do is I just use like an offset spatula like this, or you can use a butter knife, and I just spread it on like that. The dough is very hard to handle. Why don't you put your dough back in the fridge or freezer for a little while? That's really gonna help it be easier to handle. You can also add a little more flour to it to help it not be so sticky. I realize this recipe is a little, I know it, but I promise it's worth it. They're really, really soft and delicious. Does the size of the cookie matter? That's much smaller than this, I would say probably about like 2.5 inches wide. If you're using a cookie that's much smaller than this, just watch them a little closer. They'll probably cook a little faster. If you're using a really, really big cookie cutter, then you'll probably need to give them a little more time. Let me show you when they come out here. I'll check on them. Okay, I think these are done. Okay, so they still look super, super pale. Turn that off. The way you know that they're done is I can tell that they have solidified because they don't have any shininess on top of the cookie. If they still look like a tiny bit shiny or almost like a little bit wet, they need a little more time. But these look completely matte, and I can just tell by looking at them, and if I sort of pull up on one of them, they are solidified. So that's how you know they're done. They're not gonna brown, they stay really, really pale. And that is completely normal. So I'm gonna, again, let these cool on the baking sheet. I'm just gonna leave them straight on the baking sheet and let them sit there, and then once they are cooled, then I'll take them and frost them. But that is it. How are the rest of you doing? Hopefully good. All right. My email is bakerbetty@gmail.com, and that's Betty with an IE. If you have questions, you are welcome to email me. Kelsey wants to know about my baking rack. So this is from Webstaurant Store. It is called I think it's called a half speed rack. So this kind of thing is called a speed rack. Professional kitchens have like large ones that roll. This fits the half sheet pan size, so like this regular size sheet pan that most home bakers have. It fits instead of like a full size sheet pan. It does not fold away. It stays like this. So I'm lucky in that I definitely have the space for it, but I know I know it's not feasible for everybody to have space like this, but it's really nice to be able to put my sheet pans on it. But Webstaurant Store is where you can find something like this. People always ask me about my flour containers too. Those are also from Webstaurant Store. Does making the dough, does the egg size matter? Oh, sorry, I misunderstood your question. Yeah, so typically a large egg is what you're gonna want to use. If you don't have a large egg, if say you only have medium eggs or extra large eggs, if you use a smaller egg, you'll probably want to use just a little bit less flour, or if you're using a larger egg, you might need a little bit more flour. But yes, large egg is pretty much all of my recipes will use a large egg. Yes, cookie scoops, really any kitchen equipment you need, Restaurant Store is great. They just have really nice, high quality stuff. They're targeted towards professionals, but yeah, their stuff is really nice. I get a lot of stuff there. Awesome. Other questions before we sign off? So make sure your cookies are cooled before you frost them. It will melt your frosting. Keep your frosting at room temperature until you're ready to use it, unless you're not going to use it today. Put it in an airtight container in your refrigerator, then let it come to room temperature before you use it. Neither of these cookies need to be refrigerated. Once they're completely cooled, you can put them in an airtight container at room temperature. Even the frosted cookies don't need to be just butter. It can stay out at room temperature. So, any other questions before we sign off today? I'm really, really happy that you joined me today. It should not change texture if you add gel food coloring to it. So if you do want to color your buttercream, gel or powdered food coloring is a great option because it shouldn't change the texture of your buttercream. If you only have liquid buttercream or liquid food coloring, you can use that, but it will kind of thin out your buttercream and you might need to add a little bit more powdered sugar to it. But yeah, you can use any of that. It's a good question. Awesome. Again, I am at bakerbetty@gmail.com if you have any questions. This video is going to stay up at this link. So if you want to come back and watch, again, if you missed some things, this link will be available to you to come back to and rewatch it. That document that I sent you is available for you. I'm not going to take it down, so you can always print it or whatever you need to do with it. I really, really enjoyed doing this with you today. Thank you so much for your donations. We are going to be able to get Dana over that $10,000 mark with her fundraising goals, so that's really, really exciting, and I really appreciate you all supporting that fundraiser. And if you want any more baking tips or tricks, I am at Baker Betty on Instagram and on Facebook. And here on YouTube, I create all kinds of baking tutorials, baking science things. And I'm so happy you all joined me today. So have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Enjoy your cookies, and I will hopefully see you next time. Bye guys. Thank you.